Now let's look at some more examples of finding least common denominators with rational expressions. So in this video we'll go through 3 examples of finding the least common denominator. And in the following video we'll go through adding and subtracting rational expressions. So let's look at the first one. You're going to find the LCD between 8x squared and 40x to the third minus 20x squared. So the key rule is that if you have either term which is compound, that is, that has terms which are connected with plus or minus signs, then what you're going to do is you're going to factor first always. So that's the rule, factor first. And this one you don't need to factor, but this one you do, so let's mark that out. And then we can take a 4 out because there's 4 and 20, and there's x cubed and x squared, so we can take an x squared out. And then you're going to put a parenthesis around that, and you're going to divide both sides by 4x squared. So let's go 4x squared and 4x squared. 4 and 4 are 4 and 4 is 1s. X squared, x cubed, x squared is going to be x, right? You have x3 divided by x2 is x. And then you have minus 20 divided by 4 is minus 5, and the x squares cancel each other out. So now we're going to find the least common denominator between 8x squared and 4x squared times x squared minus 5. Now when you have terms which are both compound and simple, then the first thing you do is you look at all the simple terms, and you're going to find the least common denominator. And that's going to be straightforward. It's just 4 and 8. The least common denominator is going to be 8. And you have an x squared in both, so that's easy enough. You're going to remember you take a variable to the highest power. After that, you're going to, every compound term, you're going to write down every compound term that shows up. In this case, it's just x squared minus 5. So that's going to be your LCD right there. You can distribute. If you distribute, then your LCD can be rewritten 8x to the third minus 40x squared. Let's look at a second example. In our second example here, we're going to find the least common denominator between x squared plus 16x plus 60 and x squared minus 36. Now both of these are kind of compound terms, so we're going to factor both of them. So let's factor this one. This is a positive, b is positive and c is positive, so that's going to be an x plus and an x plus. Now if you need help with factoring here, then there's a video that's called Factoring 3-Case Method, or another one called Factoring Trinomials. And you can find it in the playlist under Factoring. So you have x squared plus 16x plus 60. Find two numbers that multiply to 60 and add to 16. That's easy, that's 6 and 10. So that's x plus 6 and x plus 10. And then you're going to factor x squared minus 36, and x squared minus 36 factors to x plus 6 and x minus 6. This is called the difference of two squares. Now your LCD, to find your LCD, what you're going to do is you're going to write down every term that shows up. X plus 6 shows up. It's fine that it shows up twice. You're just going to write it down once. And then x plus 10 shows up, and x minus 6 shows up. That's your LCD. Now, it could be that you would want to multiply this out, though what I would do is wait until the very last step before you do that, because you might be able to cancel something out along if this is part of a larger problem. But that's your LCD right there. It would also be correct if you multiply everything out by FOIL. And let's do the third example. 8x cubed plus 24x squared and 6x to the fourth. We're going to factor this. Let's see, let's put a parentheses around it. What goes into 8 and 24? I think that's 8. X is in both terms, so I'll take an x out to the smallest power, take an 8x squared out. When you take 8x squared out, what you're going to do is you're going to divide this term by 8x squared and divide this term by 8x squared. The 8 and the 8 cancel as x cubed and x squared cancel, and you get a single x, right? Because you have 3 x's on top, 2 x's on the bottom, so you end up with a single x. Then you have 24 over 8, that's 3, and the x squares cancel. The other one is 6x to the fourth. You don't need to factor that one. To find the LCD, whenever you have terms which are both complex and simple, first find the LCD of the simple terms. That's 6 and 8. The LCD might be 48, but I think there's a smaller number. Let's go 8 and 6. Write down the multiples of 8. 8, 16, 24. Oh, now I see it. The multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, and 24. So the LCD is 24. 24. X squared shows up in both. X shows up in both terms. Here it's x squared, x fourth. We're going to write down x to the largest power, that x to the fourth, and then x plus 3. And that is our LCD. And that's how you find least common denominators of rational expressions.